This is week 3 of the 4th quarter, and we're going to start talking about plants until the end of the school year. And we're going to start talking by reviewing a couple of concepts that we learned previously when we were talking about the human system. One of those is the idea of a system. A system is a group of structures designed to function together for a particular purpose. So, for example, the root system is a system of structures, usually underground, that's designed to anchor the plant and designed for the absorption of water and nutrients. The shoot system is above the ground. It holds leaves in a certain place in order for them to take in sunlight. Another concept that we've talked about before is the organ. An organ is a structure within a system that has a specific form, and the form generally also implies its function. So when we talk about leaves, what we're talking about is 3 basic shapes of leaves. The first is the broad or flat leaf. The examples of these include a maple tree, a dandelion, and a rosebush. There's also the long, narrow leaves that are seen with grasses, lilies, and onions. And then there are the needle-like or scale-like leaves, which are shown in the picture here, which are seen in pines, firs, and cedar trees. So what are the parts of a leaf? One part is called the blade. The blade is the flat portion of the leaf that most people see as a green projection from the stem. The edge of the leaf, or the edge of the blade, is called the margin. And inside that blade is generally veins, and these veins are pipelines that carry food and water to and from the leaf. Some leaves, not all, but some leaves have a dominant main vein that runs down the middle of the blade, and that main vein is called the midrib. The portion of the leaf that attaches the blade to the stem is called the petiole. This is that thick portion that basically when you pick a leaf, you usually pick it by the petiole. And leaves that do not have a petiole are called sessile leaves because they are stuck to the stem and they can't move on their own. Leaves with petioles actually can move with the wind or other structures. Another part of the leaf is called the sheath, and this is the part on a sessile leaf that attaches that kind of leaf to the stem. The stipules are small leaf-like structures or scale structures that cover the leaf while it is developing. Now, pretty soon I'm going to show you a picture which will point out all these various structures. The buds, which are on the stem, contain the developing leaf and also contain developing new stems. And they're covered by something called a bud scale, which protects the bud while the leaf and the stem is dormant. And then, as you know, leaves fall off in the fall, and there are sites where the leaves used to be, and these sites are called leaf scars. There are also sites where there are previous bud scales, and those are called bud scale scars. So let's take a look at a picture and point out these various parts of the leaf and the stem. So the first one is the margin, which you can see over on the left. The blade, and that's not meant to point at a vein, that's meant to just point at the leaf itself. That part is called the blade. And then inside the blade are these pipelines that are called veins. And then here is the attachment to the stem that's called the petiole. And this is the stipule, which is part of the leaf before it comes out. And then you have 2 buds. One of these buds is associated with the leaf, the other is on its own. And this is a leaf scar where a previous leaf has fallen off this stem. And then this line structure here is called the bud scale scar. So the bud scale scar is this line structure right here. Now there are two fundamental types of leaves, the simple leaf and the compound leaf. A simple leaf is one blade on each petiole. A compound leaf is a leaf that has more than one blade on each petiole. This is a simple leaf. This is a small stem, and these are individual petioles. Now the arrangement of leaves can be various different kinds of arrangements. Now the point at which leaves leave and grow from the stem is called a node. If you have two leaves at each node, that's called an opposite arrangement. If you have one leaf at each node that are across from each other that alternate, then it's called an alternate arrangement. If there are three or more leaves at each node, then that's called whorled. And then lastly, if you have a cluster of leaves from a single node, then that's called a rosette. And the next slide will show us some pictures. So you have, over here you have one leaf at each node, and they are opposite each other as you go down the stem. So this is an alternate arrangement. The second arrangement is shown here. The opposite arrangement is where you have two leaves at each node and they are opposite each other. This is the whorled, where you have multiple leaves at each node, three or more. And then lastly, if you have a single area where leaves come out, or leaflets, from one specific node, that's called a rosette. Now let's take a look at the internal structures of the leaf. In a leaf, there are three kinds of tissue. There is structural tissue. The epidermal tissue is the structural tissue that protects and covers leaves, roots, and stems. The cork tissue replaces the epidermal tissue on woody stems and protects and waterproofs the stem. And then the parenchyma, which is found in the roots, stems, leaves, and fruits that make and store food. These are all structural tissues. And then lastly, supportive and strengthening tissue, which are fibers that run through the roots, stems, and leaves and do exactly what it says. They support and strengthen these structures. The second kind of tissue is vascular tissue. There are essentially two kinds of vascular tissue. The xylem, which transports water and dissolved minerals up from the roots. And then the phloem, which transports food, principally glucose, down from the leaves where it is produced. If you cut the stem, you'll find sap. And sap is a sweet liquid found in the stem of a plant. And the composition of this is generally, if you just cut a stem, is a mixture of what is being transported by the xylem and what's being transported by the phloem. The third kind of tissue is meristematic tissue, which is responsible for growth and repair of the plant. This is composed of rapidly growing and dividing cells. The leaf structures are as follows. The epidermis, which is on the surface of the leaf, and this is composed of a cuticle, which is a waxy tissue that is essentially waterproof and prevents the loss of water through the leaves. In the leaves, there are openings that control the water status that are known as stomata. And the loss of water vapor, or the loss of water vapor through the leaves and stems, is called transpiration, and we'll talk a little bit later about how this is controlled. The size of the stomata are controlled by cells known as guard cells. And then lastly, the epidermis has leaf hairs, which are small hair-like projections, and these retard the loss of water by decreasing the flow of air over the leaf. These also act as a defense mechanism against insects. Now the middle portion of the leaf is called the mesophyll. in this area is where photosynthesis occurs. And we've talked about photosynthesis before. This is the process in which food is made, or glucose is made. Within the leaf are elongated cells. Within the mesophyll of the leaf are elongated cells known as palisades. And the elongated cells, when cells elongate like that, it's called palisading. And then there are air sacs or spongy cells, that support the air spaces that are within the leaf. And then there are these intracellular air spaces that allow for air to come in contact with individual cells in the mesophyll. The purpose of this air is to bring carbon dioxide to these cells, which is necessary for the production of glucose through photosynthesis. And then the veins, as I've stated before, in the leaf contain the vascular tissue. And so here's a diagram showing you these various structures. The palisade layer is shown here on the left, and you can see the up and down or sort of palisade version of this. Palisade is a word that means standing upright like columns. And then the air spaces, which are supported by the spongy cells. And then you have the vein with both xylem and phloem vessels within the vein. And these are the guard cells that are around the stomata that control transpiration. And this is the stomata in the cells where water is allowed to work its way out. Now, veins and leaves are different depending on the different types of plants. And so the pattern of leaves is called venation. So there's various patterns. One is a parallel pattern. A parallel pattern of veins is when they run parallel to each other along the length of the leaf. The pinnate pattern is a branching pattern that you have a central dominant vein known as the midrib, and then veins branch out from the midrib. And then the palmate pattern is when you have several large veins that initiate at the start of the blade, and they initiate out from there in sort of a radial pattern. So this is a parallel arrangement, and you can see that these veins are running beside each other in a parallel way. This is the pinnate pattern, where you have the central midrib and then branching veins that come off the midrib. And then this is the palmate, where you have several large veins that come out from a single point where the petiole attaches to the blade, and then from there they branch out from that.